Hey, I'm Aubriana, and this is a conversation series with builders, leaders, and people shaping and studying the work of change across media, technology, and AI. We talk about what's really happening beyond the headlines, what's real, what's messy, and how people are thinking about transformation that actually makes a difference. Welcome to Agents of Change, Human in the Loop. Hey everyone, welcome back to Agents of Change, Human in the Loop. Today I'm joined by Kim Siler, somebody I have known for nearly 15 years, dating back to when she was leading digital transformation at Coca-Cola. And Kim has spent more than 2 decades operationalizing major technology shifts across companies like AT&T, Coca-Cola, and TeleSign. And today she's building an AI herself as the co-founder of Aethova, and she is helping senior leaders become AI ready through executive training. Kim really has a unique perspective because she's not just advising on AI transformation, but she's actively building agentic systems and shipping them. So Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yes. Did I pronounce your company name correctly?
Yes, Aethova, aethova.com.
I love it. Okay. Well, let's jump in. You've spent, more than 20 years operationalizing major digital waves, mobile, where we met, it was like the age of mobile, messaging, now AI. Looking back across all of these waves, what patterns have you seen repeating as organizations are adopting new technologies? And maybe what do you feel like is making AI transition fundamentally different this time?
Yep, absolutely. So interestingly enough, there is a pattern, actually a scary pattern, and that is that one, you get mocked when it's starting, right? So if you think about the wave of Gen 1 websites, and it was all about dancing cats, right? And everybody kind of mocked it. And then all of a sudden you saw the absolute need for it. The same thing happened with mobile. We spent 10 years saying it was the year of mobile, right? And it didn't become the year of mobile until COVID, right? And then everybody was forced to be mobile. And that next thing you know, we are all everything's on mobile. And some folks can't think of a Friday night without their Uber Eats, right? So, right. But then you start to get to where now it's copied, right? Then everybody wanted the Uber of this, the Uber of that, the Uber of this. And then it becomes regulated. And I think we're still in the mocked stage, right? Because you have kind of very different camps. Some are very, very scared. Some are going all in, or a very small portion are kind of going all in. So it's going to be interesting. And then to see which part of it gets copied, right, and then the regulation itself is a whole nother story, right? And then how is it different? The messaging channels and the digital channels were all about the where, right? So where the messages get delivered. The what changed for the how messaging changed, they actually was the how, right? So they through text messaging and how they approached it with personalization, et cetera. And then really now where we're at is AI changes who does the work, right? And I think that's important because everybody's saying it changes this, but it actually changes who does the work. And there's a big focus on organization. Well, there's not a big focus on the organizational change required, and there needs to be.
Well, that brings me to where I want to go next, which is, we've talked before and you have mentioned like the real bottleneck isn't necessarily the model, but it's decision rights, governance, organizational alignment. I think you and I are both seeing some of the friction and pushback that's there and like that dance. And so, from your perspective, what tends to break inside of organizations when AI starts compressing decision cycles? Or, if leadership team is serious about deploying AI, what organizational changes are they having to make first, or should they make first?
Right. I think it's systemic of where they're at today. So one, there's no owner, right? Mm-hmm. They think it's something that just needs to, here's your new tool, you now have access to AI, right? So that's the first failure mode. The other one is the definition of done, right? How do you define the definition of done for AI? And they don't believe it needs one. So they're going in without one. And it's just this continuous loop of, getting all these great ideas, but everybody's getting all these great ideas. How do you now bring it into something that's usable to take forward? And they're not really integrating it yet. They're pilots. They're not really integrating it with real work, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to automate a little workflow, automate this, automate, little workflows. But when you really want to look at it from the perspective of the organization needs to change. It needs real work, right? So the organizations that are still saying what should we pilot, I believe are far behind, and it's going to take a bit to get there. I see this firsthand in the fractional engagements I'm doing. The problem is almost never the technology. It's all about just the basics, going back to basics. There's no owner, no definition of done, and no integration of real work.
Yeah, it sounds what I'm hearing you say is like people are treating it like a tool. And I think that, email is a tool, right? But we cannot treat AI and the disruption it's causing to all industries as just another tool. And it really has to be almost phased out, right? Like from an outcome, what are you hoping to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really smart. You had told me before about a personal AI agent, sort of like diagnosing and working around different, issues before you even turned it on, right? What, what moment, what did that moment reveal to you? Maybe tell us, our listeners a little more about that moment and like, what did that reveal to you about where technology is going? Like, how should leaders think about autonomy and boundaries and governance as these systems become more capable?
I think it definitely, well, let me tell the story first,
Yes.
is that I decided to go all in on Claude, whatever it's called now. And I set it up in the cloud so it had its own area. I locked it over. I told it was not allowed to do anything, and I wanted to just talk to it from Slack. And I had it all set up. Everything was going great. Its name was Patty. But I was having troubles, and I hadn't turned anything on yet. I was having troubles getting it to connect to Slack. And if you know Slack has like 3,000 different options to get things connected, and it just takes a bit um, uh, without their MCP. But all of a sudden it said, it's not connected. And I'm working over in Claude Code on it, but we haven't done anything. And all of a sudden, Patty starts talking to me over here saying, I see that you're trying to connect me. You need to go do this. And that was really, really scary. And I think it was the first time that I recognized that how autonomous this truly can be, and what true autonomy is, and what true memory is. Because then as I was working with her for a while, the consistent memory was fantastic. It was great, right? When you didn't have to go through all of this context loading and wait for tokens or compress whatever. So it was great from that perspective. But I've actually turned her off right now because I just think, one, I don't have enough time to manage her, even though I know she can do a lot for me. I'm just a little. I want to wait and see a little bit. But as far as what that goes for executives needing to make decisions, it means you need to go to the planning board and plan first, and be very, very clear on what the guardrails are, what decisions and what authority are you willing to give it and allow it to have, what autonomy can it have. And if you don't know that, then you're not ready.
Well, it has made me to go back and check and be like, okay, who has access to what here? Because I don't need a Patty situation going on. Oh goodness, it's funny. My grandmother's name is Patty, and so I always think like, oh, Patty, like that's
Yeah,
that's what I'm
that's
hearing
actually
now.
why I named it. It's my mom. It's actually my grandmother and my mom's name, so that's why I named it Patty.
Perfect. Okay. Well, oh, Patty. All right. Well, listen, I see you are so active on LinkedIn. You are really doing, I think, some fundamentally foundational work, and that's helping executives become AI ready. I think that's so important. So many of us building companies, leading companies are confused. Like, how can I get up to speed fast enough and manage my day to day? And so, what I want to know from this work is like, what do most leadership teams maybe misunderstand about what this AI transformation actually requires? And perhaps what is separating organizations that are truly preparing for the shift, or individuals and leaders, um, from those that are just like experimenting? You said, a lot of people are doing proof of concepts. Like
Yeah.
um, how are you helping them get AI ready? And then what is that separation? Like, what's that line in the sand?
Yeah, I think it does go back a little bit to the org design versus technology. So what I think they're misunderstanding or they get it, but they really don't understand the impact of it, is that AI compresses decision cycles, right? And if you're compressing decision cycles for companies that were used to and built for humans that needed 48 hours to digest and synthesize, AI does it in seconds, right? So what's the first thing that breaks is approval chains, right? So if you don't have those approval chains in place, it's kind of like it stalls right there, right? Because you don't really know, okay, I did it, what's next, right? So the fix isn't a new tool, it's a governance conversation, right? So what can AI decide? It goes back to what autonomy are you willing to give it? And you need to actually sit down at the planning board and draw it out a bit and understand the implications. Like, here's all the points you were making decisions before. Now you need to compress those all over here. What autonomy can you give that agent to do? And what human in the loop, or what are you willing and when are you willing to bring in a human to guide it, inform it, direct it, approve? So and most orgs haven't had that conversation yet. I haven't, in fact, I haven't talked to one that has had that conversation yet. And we start to try to have that conversation with them now.
Does that make you think like, you talked a little bit about like who is doing the work is really going to change, right? And so if AI systems are increasingly handling this execution, human roles inevitably change. What do you feel like are these new set of skills or existing skills that become more invaluable in this AI driven organization over the next few years? Is it
Yeah,
the
I know it becomes almost it's overly used a bit, or maybe in the circles I'm in, it's overly used, but you need that unicorn or that generalist. And I say that because you need the person who can orchestrate across everyone. These big organizations are so used to being siloed, and they've always said they don't like to be siloed, but now they're forced to not be siloed. And they don't know how, right? So they just don't know how to operate as an organization like that. So you need someone who kind of understands end to end. It took me a while to own it because I always felt this bit of an imposter syndrome. Thank you, ovaries, but you know what I mean. I did, but it kind of was like I own it now that I'm a unicorn, right? Because I don't have the fancy title behind my name. I went to 2 years of art school, and I've gotten to where I'm at by absolutely going through the ranks, right? And I have been at every portion of it and have kind of built this niche between the tech folks, the creative, and the business, and understanding all the different aspects that are needed to build something that is systematic and repeatable and reusable, right? And then can be handed over to product and productized. That's not easy, right? There's not a lot of folks that can speak all those languages and understand how you're going to get. Yes, somebody can do. I was just talking to the guy from A&A, actually a former coworker of mine. I'm going to talk to him next week because he says these are the top 10 use cases of the A&A, and they were all very individual use cases. Like, that's not an AI use case.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up for absolute disaster because none of those are connected, and you're just making the problem worse. And he immediately set up a call with me, so that'd be interesting to have that conversation next week.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing from my perspective is this trend in the marketplace that's happening where you have all of these native AI niche companies popping up, and in essence, all they're doing is providing a tool that helps process one part of the workflow go faster. So it's remaining siloed. It's not thinking about from an organizational or an industry layer, how do we create this like end-to-end improvement overall? And instead, it's like, oh, we use a hammer and now we're getting a better hammer, instead of thinking about like this is the tool that replaces all tools, right? Like,
Right. And that's exactly why we went and built Aethova, or the platform we're building at Aethova, is because it's all about transformation. And every single organization now is going to need to go through this transformation, right? And the transformation ultimately boils down to people.
yep.
Right. And the change that's required for those people. And it's not just organizational change, but if we figure your training on AI is different from mine, put that into an organization where you have one person who's all in and playing with it and talking about their dog with it and building pictures with it. And you have somebody else who's over here and completely redoing their whole organization and all their teams, yearly reviews on it. You have to somehow and that's a big miss as well, is they're not training the employees on how best to use it. And that's what I'm finding. I mean, I am training folks that are very high up. I'm talking C-suite level CIOs and CTOs, not just, like the finance manager who's trying to figure it out. These are CIOs and CTOs, and it's just because it requires a different mindset on how do you talk to it and how do you get what you need out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's somewhat encouraging, I think, to everybody who's out there listening to this, feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind, to hear that, hey, there's
No.
Fortune 1000 leaders that have not gotten up to speed, that are still, in an antiquated legacy system and have not taken the steps that some of the people have who have done your training. So, on
But
one,
unfortunately, that's part of the problem, right? Is they're
yeah,
in antiquated systems and they're trying to say, I need to connect to everything. And then they're like, okay, it's connected to my data. Well, their data has like 5,000 versions of their Jira tickets. Still the same adage, right?
yep,
Garbage in is garbage out.
yep. A quick thank you to CPS Comtech for supporting this episode. As we talk about AI and what's next in media and technology, it's really easy to focus on the tools, but behind every system, every deployment, every transformation, there are people building it. CPS Comtech has been helping growing companies scale their teams since 1986, providing contract to hire, direct hire, and project based talent across technology, engineering, and technical operations. If you're expanding your team or navigating growth this year, you can learn more at cpscomtech.com and let them know you heard about them here on Agents of Change. Now back to our episode. Yeah, there's a lot of foundational work that has to happen. And on the topic of change, the concept for this show and the construct is really about how individuals like you, and I would absolutely consider you a unicorn, Kim, but how you're creating meaningful change in your industry. So, in practice, not theory, how are you personally being an agent of change right now?
An agent of change is that one, I talk about it nonstop, right? And even just recently, what I found is that my sons, I have a 10th grader and a senior in college, and this is impacting them greatly, right? This is going to impact, this is bigger than the industrial revolution, and they're not prepared for it. So I sat down and trained them, and I can see a difference in how they're approaching everyday situations. And somebody finally said, you should talk to the school. And I just posted it on the parents group this week and on Facebook saying, hey, I'm doing this for this. Do you think there's interest for kids? And I got overwhelmed with interest, which is great from that standpoint, that they recognize that their kids need it. But that just says a lot, right? So and I want to help with being that change. And then also I'm on the board of advisors for the University of North Georgia, advising on how their curriculum changes based on this, right? So when you're talking about, they were doing a digital marketing program, what are the implications of a degree in that? And ultimately it came down to, it's no longer about showing your portfolio. You need to show that you can orchestrate across agents that can manage this end to end. And if you don't understand that, right, then it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I'm being an agent of change, is kind of professing it as much as I can, to the points where my kids are like, just go ask your agent whenever something does happen, right? So it becomes a joke, but I'm very, very passionate about it. Let's say that.
I love that. Well, what I also like to do is ask the last guest to leave a question for the next guest. And I love that this question is for you, and I'm glad that you're the one answering this. So, Preeti Ori, CEO of Advertible, I had her on the podcast recently, and she asked this question, and I think it's a perfect one. When you were in the midst of building something or shaping something, what was a moment that forced you to face yourself? And how did you surprise yourself in that outcome?
So I have to say that it's probably in just building all of this. So finally I saw all the tools. I understood what all the tools were doing, but then it was like, you need to go into a terminal. Well, I went to art school. I'm used to Photoshop, right? Never once was in a terminal. And I'm like, okay, there's no time like today. Let's just do it. And I jumped into it. And before you knew it, I was building out a whole agentic system. But the time I had to face myself was that, I'm 6 months in. I have built 60 days of it has just been building this bootstrapped, no team. Scope keeps growing, and it's not because anybody's growing it. I'm growing it myself. And I think that was the time, the moment is like, am I building because it's valuable, or am I building because I can't stop? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of my passion, and I want to just keep going, keep going. So I had to face that perfectionism pull, right? And the temptation to keep building instead of shipping. And I shipped, right? And in 80 days I shipped it, production deployed. And I surprised myself that folks actually got it and they understood it, and it was landing. That was my moment that I kind of recognized I can trust myself a bit, and it's okay to push it out there, and it's not going to have everything fixed. I have 3,000 bug backlog to just slowly gets addressed. But yeah, I surprised myself by shipping when every instinct said keep perfecting. That was new for me.
I love that. And do you have a question that you want to leave for the next
You had
podcast?
mentioned this, and I did write down a question. Um, I do need to find it though. 1 second. Oh, what are leaders actually protecting that keeps them moving slow on AI?
This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, yeah, because
Um,
I could, yeah. There's a lot around that.
yes, there is. All right. Well, for people who are listening or watching and want to learn more about your work, both your company and your consulting work and getting people AI ready, can you let them know where they can find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest is on LinkedIn, Kim Siler on LinkedIn, or at my company's website, Aethova.com. Um, yeah, and just reach out to me, ping me anytime. I'm on Slack, I'm on all the channels, and sitting in this chair, it feels like every day for 16 hours a day. So I'm here.
All right. Well, Kim, this is such a fantastic conversation. Thank you again for sharing both the strategic and very practical perspective on what it actually takes to move from AI experimentation to real implementation. And to everyone listening, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with somebody who's thinking about how AI is changing the way that we work. And we'll catch you
Yeah,
next time.
great stuff. Thank you.